The fallout from the flood control corruption scandal continues to reverberate across government. Over 1.7 trillion in market value has been wiped out in just 3 weeks, and public confidence in infrastructure spending is shattered. Now, the House is eyeing reforms to make private sector inspection mandatory in all public works projects to close loopholes and stop corruption before it even starts. Joining us now is Bicol Saro representative and House Infrastructure Committee co-chair Atty. Ridon. Good morning, Congressman Ridon, and thank you for being here with us.
Good morning, Mikey. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Congressman Ridon, your committee's hearings were suspended just 2 weeks ago after 2 sessions, with the probe now under the Independent Commission, ICI. Based on what you've uncovered, where are we in this case? Are we at the beginning? Are we at the middle? Are we at the end? What do you think? Where are we?
Well, I think we're already at the middle to the end of it. No? So we've already been able to identify so many personalities involved in the flood control corruption scandal. We have been able to identify legislators. We've been able to identify DPWH officials, contractors. But more importantly, and this was the most important finding in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, we were also able to identify executive officials, which were supposedly absent in the first few hearings, but had been unraveled during the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings. And I think the ICI is also looking at them as well, particularly because they've been releasing immigration lookout bulletin orders against the high-level executive officials as well.
Yeah. Okay. Based on the early hearings, some have noted that some of these are outright ghost projects. They seem to be isolated, but the substandard or overpriced projects are widespread. Is that how you see things? And what are the other patterns that have emerged?
Well, the admission of overpriced and substandard projects was made by DPWH officials, no? Particularly those in Bulacan. And that they had stated that because biddings were rigged, and that because they were basically calling the shots at the level of the district, they were able to basically determine how the prices will be, how the costs will be. Which is why I think one of the more important interventions that need to be made would be including the private sector, particularly engineering design firms, in project inspections over the course of project implementation.
That's right. You've proposed that the private sector take part in auditing and inspecting the infrastructure projects. Do you suggest this at every phase of the construction?
I think every phase, particularly at every moment in which the contractor would want to bill government, I think the private sector should be able to make parallel inspections on the projects that are being implemented by the DPWH. I think what we had seen in the hearings is that we cannot just surrender the inspections to the DPWH alone, particularly if engineering districts had in fact been compromised, like what we had seen in Bulacan.
Yeah, the DPWH can't police itself. Will these independent engineers have real authority, or will they just have advisory roles?
No, I think they have to give the go-ahead and make a determination on whether the actual phase of implementation was faithful to the actual design, and whether the specifications for the project, particularly the materials that had been used, had been faithful to the original design. So I think their intervention will be indispensable, particularly on whether or not the contractor will in fact be paid.
Yeah, they need to make sure they're faithful to the specs and the design. Talking about accountability, should lawmakers be required to publicly disclose and sign off on every insertion or amendment they introduce to the national budget? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that's an innovation that we would want to see, and I think I've heard the members of the appropriations panel of the House proposing similar interventions as well. And I think this adds to the transparency and accountability mechanisms that we would want to place into the budget. So at whichever stage of the budget process in which a legislator, congressman, or senator would want to insert or amend or make an initiative, particularly for their own districts or particularly for their own advocacies, they should be able to place their name onto the projects that they would want to insert or make an initiative on for the next budget.
On the congressional front, leadership change from House Speaker Martin Romualdez to Boji D, that marked a major political shift. How does this change affect the tone and the dynamic of Congress, especially when it comes to pursuing accountability in this probe?
Well, I think we've seen House Speaker Boji D personally deliver the Infrastructure Committee documents, transcripts, and evidence to the ICI. So I think that's a very specific commitment of the new leadership towards accountability, transparency, and making sure that whoever it is that may be involved in the flood control corruption will in fact be brought to justice. No? So I think that was a very significant step by Speaker Boji D, going to the ICI himself.
Speaking of justice, we've taken that very difficult step towards good governance by calling out the massive corruption that happens every day, with high-ranking officials mentioned. The great expectation now is for high-ranking officials to be jailed. Do you think that this is going to happen, Congressman?
Well, I think the ICI has been doing the most important steps at this point, no, to build the cases against everyone who had been named, who had been involved in flood control corruption. So they have been requesting the ILBOs, which I stated earlier, the Immigration Lookout Bulletin Orders, against each and every person that had been named in testimonies and affidavits in the Blue Ribbon Committee in the Senate and the House Infrastructure Committee. I think the request is pending with the DOJ. No? So I think we would wait as to when the the Bureau of Immigration will actually issue the ILBOs, no, that have been requested by the ICI.
Okay, stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, the business community is deeply concerned about this. While we're trying to attract foreign investment, none of what's been appearing in the news about the Philippines has been welcoming. SEC Chair Francis Lim says that the flood control scandal has already wiped out 1.7 trillion pesos, that's trillion, in market value at the Philippine Stock Exchange, sending a clear message that corruption is a massive economic risk. What do you say to investors that now see corruption as an economic risk and not just a political one? Yeah.
Well, I think corruption is a risk wherever it may be. No, but I think we have to be very clear on what Chairman Lim had actually stated. If you look at the charts relating to the PSEI, it's not exactly just about corruption in the Philippines as to why you have a weakening of the index. If you go back like a year, it has almost been the same situation that we find ourselves in. No? So I think he needs to clarify the very bombastic statements that he had made that corruption is a weapon of what do you call it, like a destruction of wealth, no?
Yeah.
Massive destruction of wealth, no? Because I think it is more than that. It is also more about, a weakening economy, which has been compounded, to be frank, by the corruption scandal that we are finding ourselves in.
Right. It's a difficult environment globally and locally. But yes, it is being compounded by the massive corruption scandals. In any case, what can we do to restore investor confidence? What's Congress going to do to restore investor confidence?
Well, firstly, I think the most important point would be to make sure that actual accountability is ensured by government. So ICI and all law enforcement should make sure that high-level officials that are involved actually get charged and actually get convicted. And second would be to basically initiate reforms in the budget and in the project implementation process. So I think the discussions relating to identification and naming of proponents for projects should contribute to the transparency processes that we would want to see in the budget process. And secondly, the private sector interventions, inspections, is something which I think the private sector and investors would most definitely welcome moving forward.
Yeah, we are all looking forward to accountability and transparency. Thank you, Attorney Ridon, Bicol Saro Rep and House Infrastructure Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mikey. Good morning.